This is Mongolian Mindset, and today we're going to be doing a breakdown of Jordan Peterson. We had one of the subscribers recommend we type Jordan Peterson. I think they said they were an ENTJ, that Jordan Peterson was the ENTJ, and to look at him. Okay, so we're going to do that today. They have personality database. Our sworn enemy has Jordan Peterson as an INFJ. Okay, with over 1,077 votes. ENTP with 518 and INTP with 251. So we're gonna see. We're gonna put that to the test. We're gonna see what we get today. And if you like the content, please subscribe. Like we said, please pick up Linda Barrens books if you want to be able to accurately type yourself and others with 100% accuracy, because she has the best metrics to do that. But we're gonna break down Jordan Peterson today and see what we get.
Ski wrote.
If you like the content, please subscribe. Please comment below a celebrity that you would want typed, and we'll look into that, put it on a list, and start knocking them off.
In The Idiot, spoken through the character of Prince Mishkin, that beauty will save the world. Solzhenitsyn actually mentioned this in his Nobel Prize acceptance speech. What do you think Dostoevsky meant by that? Was he right?
Well, I guess.
All right, so the first thing we're going to try to look at and try to get done is he informative or is he direct? Is he beating around the bush? Is he vague? Is he wordy? Or is he direct, specific, concise, and straight to the point? Let's see what we get here.
It's the divine that saves the world, let's say. You could say that by definition.
It's the divine that saves the world. That sounds pretty abstract to me. Okay.
And then you might say, well, are there pointers to that which will save the world or that which eternally saves the world? And the answer to that, in all likelihood, is yes. And that's maybe truth and love and justice and the classical virtues, beauty, perhaps in some sense foremost among them. That's a difficult case to make, but definitely a pointer.
Which direction is the arrow?
Okay, so from that, you got to truly ask yourself, was that direct, specific, concise, and to the point? Okay, ask yourself right now, do you think that was direct, specific, concise, and to the point? Hell no.
Dostoevsky wrote in The Idiot, spoken through the character of Prince Mishkin, that beauty will save the world. Solzhenitsyn actually mentioned this in his Nobel Prize acceptance speech. What do you think Dostoevsky meant by that? Was he right?
Well,
he just asked, was he right? Now listen to the answer that he gives. It's very wordy, descriptive. It's not to the point. It's not concise.
I guess it's the divine that saves the world, let's say. You could say that by definition. And then you might say, well, are there pointers to that which will save the world or that which eternally saves the world? And the answer to that, in all likelihood, is yes. And that's maybe truth and love and justice and the classical virtues, beauty, perhaps in some sense foremost among them. That's a difficult case to make, but definitely a pointer.
Which direction is the arrow?
Okay, so you ask yourself, was that direct, concise, specific, and to the point? The answer to that is no. Okay, we're gonna put an asterisk aside that he is informative. Okay, now I want you to remember, ENTJs have direct language. Go listen to Donald Trump, straight to the point. Boom, 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 boom. You know exactly what Donald Trump is saying. Right there, I just watched that twice and I don't even know what he's saying. Okay, and it was abstract as well. And when they start getting abstract and informative, it gets very hard to follow them.
Arrow pointing.
Well, the arrow's pointing up. No, I think that which it points to is what beauty points to. It transcends beauty. It's more than beauty.
And that speaks to the divine.
It points to the divine. Yeah, and I would say again, by definition, because we could define the divine in some real sense. So one way of defining the divine is, what is divine to you is your most fundamental act.
Okay, so he's talking about defining divine. That's TI. Okay, we can define divine. That's TI right there, all day long. We can define it. He's not saying we can look at external sources. That would be TE. He's saying we can define it. Like right here, right now, I can define that for you. TI.
Axiom. And you might say, well, I don't have a fundamental axiom. Then I would say that's fine, but then you're just confused. because you have a bunch of contradictory axioms. And you might say, well, I have no axioms at all. And then I'd say, well, you're just epistemologically ignorant beyond comprehension if you think that. Because that's just not true at all.
But you don't think a
That's
human...
just not true at all. Put another point for TIF either. It is very well to see that Jordan Peterson is informative. All of that, and he's actually predicting what other people would say here. So you can actually put a point down for actually abstract.
On comprehension if you think that. Because that's just not true at all.
But you don't think a human being can exist within contradictions?
Well, yeah, we have to exist within contradiction, but when the contradictions make themselves manifest, say in confusion with regard to direction, then the consequence of that technically is anxiety.
All right, so he's talking about any consequences there. So I'm gonna put a point down for SINE. See there, he's talking about the consequences there, and the consequences is technically anxiety.
Because you have a bunch of contradictory axioms, and you might say, well, I have no axioms at all. And then I'd say, well, you're just epistemologically ignorant beyond...
Beating you. See, the thing about TI people and very strong TI people is they are quick to shut you down with knowledge. They're very quick to be like, you're ignorant, okay? TI, especially TI heroes, quick. You ain't got much time with them. And you can check that out. Dario Nardi talks about it in this book with the neuroscience of personality, where he actually goes through the brain scans, and he said the TI DOMs listen the least. So when you come to them, you better be very on top of your stuff when you're talking about knowledge.
Comprehension if you think that. Because that's just not true at all.
So you don't think a human being can exist within contradictions?
Well, yeah, we have to exist within contradiction, but when the contradictions make themselves manifest, say in confusion with regard to direction, then the consequence of that technically is anxiety.
So that was the consequence that we noted for SINE right there. NE is attached to SI, and he's talking about the consequences there.
And frustration and disappointment and all sorts of other negative emotions. But the cardinal negative emotion signifying multiple pathways forward is anxiety. It's an entropy signal.
But you don't think that kind of entropy signal can be channeled into beauty, into love? Why does beauty and love have to be clear, ordered, simple?
Well, I would say it probably doesn't have to be, it can't be reduced to clarity and simplicity. Because when it's optimally structured, it's a balance between...
All right, so he's talking about the system there, when it's optimally structured. Put a point down for systematic. So I'm already going to say this guy's informative. I'm going to go ahead and take direct types off the board, okay? So personality database, he can't be an INFJ because INFJs have direct language. If you want to see an INFJ, go watch Cristiano Ronaldo, very direct language. He can't be an ENTJ because they also have direct language, okay? And he's primarily TI. ENTJ spit TE all day, external sources and stuff. The thing about TE users is they don't really feel that confident with their own internal logic, so they use references a lot. But you see Jordan Peterson, he feels very confident in his knowledge. You know, he feels very confident in that. That's like a byproduct of a TI, strong TI users too. So INFJ and ENTJ are already eliminated because he is informative. And let's go check the chart. Okay, so being informative eliminates 8 types. It eliminates all of the 8 direct types. That means he can't be INFJ, he can't be ENFJ, he can't be INTJ, he can't be an ENTJ, he can't be an ESTP, he can't be an ISTP, can't be an ESTJ, and can't be an ISTJ. Okay, he can only be INFP, ENFP, INTP, ENTP, ESFP, ISFP, ESFJ, ISFJ. So that's what we're looking at right now. We're looking at one of the 8 informative types. Let's go ahead and continue.
Order and chaos, not order itself. If it's too ordered, if music is too ordered, it's not acceptable. It sounds like a...
Okay, so he just hit us with a what if statement. That's abstract. What if music is too ordered?
The love. Why does beauty and love have to be clear, ordered, simple?
Well, I would say it probably doesn't have to be, it can't be reduced to clarity and simplicity, because when it's optimally structured, it's a balance between order and chaos, not order itself.
He's talking about the system. It has to be balance between order and chaos.
Too ordered.
So,
if music is too ordered, it's not.
That's
it's
our
not
that's our what if statement there.
It sounds like a drum machine. It's too repetitive. It's too predictable. It has to have, well, it has to have some fire in it,
Yes.
along with the structure. I was in Miami doing a seminar on Exodus with a number of scholars, and this is a beauty discussion. When Moses first encounters the burning bush, it's not a conflagration that demands attention. It's something that catches his attention. It's a phenomena, and that means to shine forth. And Moses has to stop and attend to it, and he does. And he sees this fire that doesn't consume the tree. And the tree is a structure, right? It's a tree-like structure. It's a branching structure. It's a hierarchical structure. It's a self-similar structure. It's a fractal structure. And it's the tree of life, and it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And the fire in it is the transformation.
Okay, so he's getting really abstract here. Putting points down for abstract. We're almost ready to go ahead and call him abstract, and that would eliminate all of the concrete informative types.
It's always occurring within every structure, and the fact that the fire doesn't consume the bush in that representation is an indication of the balance of transformation with structure, and that balance is presented as God.
He's talking about structures, balance. So we're putting points down for systematic as well. JP is.
And what attracts Moses to it, in some sense, is the beauty. Now, it's the novelty and all that, but like a painting is like a burning bush. That's a good way of thinking about it, a great painting. It's too much for people often. You know, my house was, and will soon be again, completely covered with paintings inside. And it was hard on people to come in there because, well, my mother, for example, would say, well, why would you want to live in a museum? And I'd think, well, I would rather live in a museum than anywhere else in some real sense. But beauty is daunting. It scares people. They're terrified of buying art, for example, because their taste is on display. And they should be terrified because generally people have terrible taste. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't foster it and develop it, but...
See, and you know, he's using a lot of TI here. He's not referencing any internal sources at all. Like, what external source did he use? And don't say the Bible with Moses. Okay, that was all his interpretation of everything.
You know, when you put your taste on display, it's really exposes you.
Even to yourself as you walk past it.
Oh, definitely.
Every day.
Absolutely.
This is who I am.
Yeah, well, and look how mundane that is, and look how trite it is, and look at how cliched it is, and look at how sterile or too ordered it is, or too chaotic.
Okay, so, yeah, he's very informative.
How quickly you start to take it for granted because you've seen it so many times.
Well, if it's a real piece of art, that doesn't happen.
You notice the little details.
The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I mean, there are images.
The whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Religious images in particular, so we could call them deep images, that people have been unpacking for 4,000 years and still haven't. I'll give you an example. This is a terrible example. So I did a lecture series on Genesis, and I got a lot of it unpacked, but by no means all of it. When God kicks Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden, he puts cherubim with flaming swords at the gate to stop human beings from re-entering paradise. I thought, what the hell does that mean, cherubim, and why do they have flaming swords?
See that? Why does that mean? He's trying to figure it out by TI. What does that mean? He's trying to figure it out by TI.
I don't get that. What is that exactly?
I don't get that. Blah, blah, blah. Not making sense to my internal logic. Yes.
And then I found out from Matthew Pagio, who wrote a great book on symbolism in Genesis, that cherubim are...
So that would be the first form of TE there.
The supporting monsters of God. It's a very complicated idea. And that they're partly a representation of that which is difficult to fit into conceptual systems. They've also got an angelic or demonic aspect. Take your pick. Why do they have flaming swords? Well, a sword is a symbol of judgment and
talking about symbols,
the separation of the wheat from the chaff. I use a sword to cut away, and to carve. And a flaming sword is not only that which carves, it's that which burns.
So he's
and
going
what does it carve
into
away?
more clarification. It's TI heavy. Okay? Just reeks of TI and NE. Just reeks of it. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate all of the FE types. The FE types would be ESFP, ISFP, ENFP, and INFP. He can't be one of those. He has to be ESFJ, ISFJ, INTP, ENTP. Okay, so we're looking at that. And both of them are both systematic, and you already see he's very systematic. He always talking about methodology, structures that exist, hierarchy structures. Blah, blah, blah. He talks about those nonstop. So you can tell that he's systematic, but since ESFJs and ENTPs are systematic, we don't need to go into that anymore, but I will be adding points so y'all understand. And we're about to eliminate ESFJs and ISFJs because he's clearly abstract. And ESFJs and ISFJs are concrete thinkers. So they're going to be eliminated in the next abstract point, and we'll be down to ENTP and INTP.
And burn. Well, you want to get into paradise? It carves away everything about you that isn't perfect. And so what does that mean? Okay, well, here's part of what it means. This is a terrible thing. So you could say that the entire Christian narrative is embedded in that image. Why? Well, let's say that flaming sword...
Answering why. More TI. He's not referencing books. He's just using his own internal references. Like all of it. Like he's using himself. He's, he might go to a book to look for something else, but it's the answer to why to TI for him. So it's clear that he has TI.
Words are a symbol of death. That seems pretty obvious.
Symbols of death.
Let's say further that they're a symbol of apocalypse and hell. That doesn't seem completely unreasonable. So here's an idea.
And the reason why this is abstract is because he's talking about the intangibles. Okay, concrete people talk about tangible things. Intangibles is anything that can't be used with the five senses. Okay, he's talking about ideas, contextual things, otherworldly thing, philosophies, that type of thing. What if? So I'm going to go ahead and take ESFJ off the board and ISFJ off the board, and that's because they're concrete thinkers. Okay, they won't be able to handle something like this. So we're down to ENTP and INTP, and the difference between INTPs and ENTPs. ENTPs are progression process. They look at the process of things or how things move from one step to another. Right, that's what they're going to highlight things. And INTPs are outcome focused. They're outcome, and they're introverted, so they're going to primarily respond to the questions that's asked. While ENTP will initiate and change topic, cut people off, that type of thing. So we're going to see what JP is here. But yeah, we're down to two types here: ENTP, INTP.
Not only do you have to face death, you have to face death and hell before you can get to paradise. Hellish judgment. And all that's embedded in that image. And a piece of art with an image like that has all that information in it. And it shines forth in some fundamental sense. Abstract. It reaches into the back tendrils of your mind at levels you can't even comprehend and grips you. I mean, that's why people go to museums and gaze at paintings.
That was an SI thing that you're saying, like it comes out, it grips you. Really living from that internal sensation there. But we already know ENTPs and INTPs are SINE users, so that doesn't matter.
They don't understand, and that's why they'll pay. What's the most expensive objects in the world? If it's not carbon fiber racing yachts, it's definitely classic paintings, right? It's high-level technological implements.
What did he just used that right there. Where did he reference a source from? He didn't reference a source at all. He just told you straight up what it was.
Or it's classic art. Well, why are those things so expensive? Why do we build temples to house the images.
Why?
Even secular
TR.
people go to museums. I'm secular. Well, are you in a museum? Yes. Are you looking at art? Yes. Well, what makes you think you're secular then?
It's arguable that the thing many, many centuries from now that will remain of all of human civilization will be our art.
Well,
not even the words.
Well, a book has remained a very long time, right? The biblical writings.
Not that long.
No,
a few millennia.
That's right.
But that's in the full arc of living organisms.
Yeah.
Perhaps will not be.
Well, we have we have artistic images that are at least 50,000 years old, right? That have survived. And some of those they're already profound in their symbolism.
By we, do you mean humans?
Yeah, we found them. And they've lasted that long. And then think about Europe. Secular people all over the world make pilgrimages to Europe. Well, why? Because of the beauty. Obviously. I mean, that's self-evident. And it's partly because there are things in Europe that are so beautiful, they take your breath away, right? They make your hair stand on end. They fill you with a sense of awe. And
so that's all SI right there. Talking about what feelings it gives you inside, internal sensations. Yeah, we'll put point down for that. But we already know we need to figure out, is he process focused or is he outcome focused? Or is he initiating or responding? We need to figure that out, and we can go ahead and nail him to the cross. But he's an NTP.
Yes. Are you looking at art? Yes. Well, what makes you think you're secular then?
It's arguable that the thing many, many centuries from now that will remain of all of human civilization will be our art.
Well,
not even the words.
Well, a book has remained a very long time, right? The biblical writings.
Not that long.
No,
a few millennia.
That's right.
But that's in the full arc of living organisms.
Yeah.
Perhaps will not be.
Well, we have we have artistic images that are at least 50,000 years old, right? That have survived. And some of those they're already profound in their symbolism.
By we, do you mean humans?
Yeah, we found them. And they've lasted that long. And then think about Europe. Secular people all over the world make pilgrimages to Europe.
Think about Europe.
Well, why? Because of the beauty. Obviously. I mean, that's self-evident. And it's partly because there are things in Europe.
I feel like whenever Jordan Peterson talks, he kind of walks you through his thinking process. He walks you through his TI. Whenever he talks, well, why this? And he's like anticipating what you would ask him, and then he answers it himself. Vance.
That are so beautiful, they take your breath away, right? They make your hair stand on end. They fill you with a sense of awe.
So he's talking about the SI experience here that we wanted you guys to see. Yeah, he's talking about the SI experience, internal sensation.
And we need to see those things. It's not optional. We need to see those things. The cathedrals. I was in a cathedral in Vienna, and it was terribly beautiful,
Terribly beautiful.
Well, it was terribly beautiful.
Is beauty painful for you? Is that the highest form of beauty? It really challenges you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I got a good analysis of the statue of David. Michelangelo's statue says, "You could be far more than you are." That's what that statue says. And this cathedral, we went down into the understructure of it, and there were 3 floors of bones from the plague, and there they all are. And then that cathedral's on top of it. It's no joke to go visit a place like that. No, it rattles you to the core.
Internal sensation. It rattles you to the core. I'm getting internal sensation from the cathedral with the bones from the plague. Very detailed memory there.
Our religious systems have become propositionally dubious.
Okay, our religious system now is getting back into the systematic stuff.
There's no arguing with the architecture, although modern architects like to, with their sterility and their giant middle fingers erected everywhere. But beauty is a terrible pointer to God. And a secular person will say, well, I don't believe in God. It's like, have it your way. You cannot move forward into the unforeseen horizon of the future except on faith.
Okay, so he's talking about moving into the future. Might be points for abstract, but we already know he's abstract.
And you might say, well, I have no faith. It's like, well, good luck with the future then, because what are you then, nihilistic and hopeless? And
good luck with the future. Okay, that was the outcome as well. Okay, good luck. You know, if you don't believe in religion, good luck with the outcome. Okay.
Anxiety-ridden? And if not, well, something's guiding you forward. It's faith in something, or multiple things, which just makes you a polytheist, which I wouldn't recommend.
You classify something as well with his TI. Look at him. Oh, his TI. And I wouldn't recommend.
Well, let me ask you one short-lived biological meat bag to another. Who is God, then? Let's try to sneak up to this question if it's at all possible.
See, they're really talking about abstract things here. Concrete people don't like to be in this realm, but they are very enthusiastic on tackling this. Very shows like they're very abstract.
Is it possible to even...
I'm not sure if the guest, the host is abstract, but like people who are abstract like to talk about things like this.
Talk about this.
Well, it better be, because otherwise there's no communicating about it, right? It has to be something that can be brought down to earth.
Well, we might be too dumb to bring it down.
It's not just ignorant, it's also sinful, right? So, because there's not knowing, and then there's wanting to know or refusing to know.
Yeah.
And so you might say, well, could you
Well, that TI is good.
extract God from a description of the objective world, right? Is God just the ultimate unity of the natural reality? And I would say, well, in a sense, there's some truth in that, but not exactly, because God, in the highest sense, is the spirit that you must emulate in order to thrive.
Like I said, this guy's very abstract, man.
How's that for a biological definition? Spirit is a pattern. The spirit that you must emulate in order to thrive.
So it's a kind of, in one sense, when we say the human spirit, it's that.
It's an animating principle. Yeah, it's a pattern. And you might say, well, what's the pattern? Okay, well, I can tell you that to some degree. Imagine that, like you're gripped by beauty, you're gripped by admiration. So, and you can just notice this. This isn't propositional. You have to notice it. It's like, oh, turns out I admire that person. So what does that mean? Well, it means I would like to be like him or her. That's what admiration means. It means there's something about the way they are that...
So he's classifying admiration here. TI. He's not using references or anything. He's not saying like the definition of this from Google or definition from this Webster. He's not saying that. He's not doing that.
Hell's imitation.
He's not relying on external sources at all.
Other instinct, or inspires respect or awe even. Okay, what is that grips you? Well, I don't know. Well, let's say, okay, fine, but it grips you and you want to be like that. Kids hero worship, for example, and so do adults for that matter, unless they become entirely cynical.
I worship quite a few heroes.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Proudly.
Yes, well, there you go. And there's no, that worship, that celebration and proclivity to imitate is worship. That's what worship means most fundamentally. Now imagine you took the set of all admirable people.
This is hypothetical.
And you extracted out AI learning.
Okay, so he is right now giving hypothetical, and he's also setting up metrics to test a methodology so that'd be actually systematic as well.
You extracted out the central features of what constitutes admirable. And then you did that repeatedly until you purified it to what was most admirable.
So he's talking about how you would go
That's
about
as
it in
good
a
as
systematic way.
You're going to get in terms of a representation of God. And you might say, well, I don't believe in that. It's like, well...
And that could be an outcome as well, because he's looking for a specific outcome there, and that was to get to an actual representation of God. So he seems to be outcome focused. We got a couple points for outcome. ENTPs are progression / process, so they really don't care about outcomes. They care about like the process of things, or like they think like how things move together, like move apart or whatever, from event to event. But Jordan Peterson is shooting for an outcome here. So I think it's more than likely that he's an INTP, but we're going to keep going until we get some more outcome statements from him. Or if we get enough process statements, we'll say he's ENTP. But I highly doubt it.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
It's not a set of propositional facts. It's not a scientific theory about the structure of the objective world. And then I can say something about that too.
Systematic.
Because I've been thinking about this a lot, especially.
And I want to say, first, personality database has him as an INFJs. INFJs are people focused. They're not systematic. They won't talk about systems. That you rarely catch them talking about systems, but you can see that Jordan Peterson is highly into systems. Like it's practically his speech. I mean, I already got like 7 points for it. And INFJs are direct. It's clear as day that this guy is informative. He's very wordy, very descriptive, kind of passive, giving you information, allowing you to make the decision for yourself here. So that is indicative of informative language, and he's not direct, specific, concise, and to the point. It's kind of hard to follow him. Sometimes you kind of got to go back and rewind it to see what he's actually saying. So yeah, he's informative. And so we're looking at a little bit more, and then we'll call him outcome.
Since talking to Richard Dawkins, it's like, okay, the postmodernist types, going back way before Derrida and Foucault, maybe back to Nietzsche, who I admire greatly, by the way, says, God is dead. It's like, okay. But Nietzsche said, God is dead, and we have killed him, and we'll not find enough water to wash away all the blood. So that was Nietzsche. He's no fool.
He's got a way with words.
He certainly does. And so then you think, okay, well, we killed the transcendent. Well, what does that mean for science? Well, it frees it up, because all that nonsense about a deity is just the idiot superstition that stops the scientific process from moving forward. That's basically the new atheist claim, something like that. It's like, wait a second. Do you believe in the transcendent if you're a scientist?
Oh.
And the answer is, well, not only do you believe in it, you believe in it more than anything else, because if you're a scientist, you believe in what objects to your theory more than you believe in your theory.
So he's talking about the system behind it. He's talking about the theory. Theories would be also abstract. Forgot to mention that theories are also abstract. So yeah, and he's hitting you with, like, what he does is he gets you to agree on something, and then he takes you into more TI, and then more TI, and then more TI until he thins it all the way down.
Now, we got to think that through very carefully. So your theory describes the world, and as far as you're concerned, your description of the world is the world. But because you're a scientist, you think, well, even though that's my description of the world and that's what I believe, there's something beyond what I believe. And that's the object. And so I'm going to throw my theory against the object and see where it'll break. And then I'm going to use the evidence of the break as a source of new information to revitalize my theory. So as a scientist, you have to posit the existence of the ontological transcendent before you can move forward at all. But more, you have to posit that contact with the ontological transcendent, annoying though it is because it upsets your apple cart, is exactly what will in fact set you free. So then you accept the proposition that there is a transcendent reality, and that contact with that transcendent reality is redemptive in the most fundamental sense, because if it wasn't, well, why would you bother making contact with it? You're going to make everything worse or better?
Why does the contact with the transcendent?
He's looking for an outcome.
And set you free as a scientist.
Because you assume, I mean, freedom in the most fundamental sense. It's like, well, freedom from want, freedom from disease, freedom from ignorance, right? That it informs you.
So it's
the logos in it
of science.
It is definitely that. Yeah, it's the direction. Let's say the directionality of science. That's a narrative direction, not a scientific direction. And then the question is, what is the narrative? Well, it posits a transcendent reality. It posits that the transcendent reality is corrective. It posits that our knowledge structures should be regarded with humility. It posits that you should bow down in the face of of the transcendent evidence. And you have to take a vow, you know this as a scientist, you have to take a vow to follow that path if you're going to be a real scientist. It's like the truth, no matter what. And that means you posit the truth as a redemptive force. Well, what does redemptive mean? Well, why bother with science? Well, so people don't starve, so people can move about more effectively, so life can be more abundant, right? So it's all ensconced within an underlying ethic.
Why you do for science?
Contact with the
You
transcendent.
hear that? Why you do for science? Because these outcomes, this outcome. Go back.
And set you free as a scientist.
Because you assume, I mean, freedom in the most fundamental sense. It's like, well, freedom from want, freedom from disease, freedom from ignorance, right? That it informs
so first
you.
he's trying to get you to clarify which freedom you're looking for.
So it's
The logos in it.
of science.
It is definitely that. Yeah, it's the direction, let's say the directionality of science. That's a narrative direction, not a scientific direction. And then the question is, what is the narrative? Well, it posits a transcendent reality. It posits that the transcendent reality is corrective. It posits that our knowledge structures should be regarded with humility. It posits that you should bow down in the face of the transcendent evidence. And you have to take a vow, you know this as a scientist, you have to take a vow to follow that path if you're going to be a real scientist. It's like the truth.
No matter what.
No matter what. And that means you posit the truth as a redemptive force. Well, what does redemptive mean? Well, why bother with science? Well, so people don't starve. So people
Why
can
bother
move
with
about
science? So we get this outcome, so people don't starve, so people can move more effectively.
So life can be more abundant, right? So it's all ensconced within an underlying ethic. So the reason I was saying that while we were talking about belief in God, it's like this is a very complicated topic, right? Do you believe in a transcendent reality? Say, okay,
and
now
you
let's
see
say
that he's staying on topic here. So you could say he's responding as well, but we're gonna get one more point for outcome, and we're done here. Everything he's looking for a general outcome for things. He's not looking for the progression or the process of it. As in ENTPs, they're more progression focused. They're not set out looking for a desired outcome. They might look for a desired outcome due to being pragmatic, but it's not like when you see like an ENTJ or INTP, their focus is the end product. But when you're dealing with the background type, you have to understand that they understand the process to get there as well. As an ENTJ, a lot of times, well, the structure types like ESTJ, ENTJ, ESTP, ENFJ, they don't really give a fuck about the process. Like, just give me these outcomes.
you buy the argument I just made on the natural
and
fund.
that's because the background types, which is ISFJ, INTP, INFP, ISFP, they want the best possible outcome. They're really shooting for that.
Say, yeah, that's just nature. That's not God. And then I'd say, well, what makes you think you know what nature is?
He's doing so much anticipation because he's using his anticipation to answer, like, to say, like, what you would ask. So that's really abstract as well, anticipations. So, yeah, but we already know he's abstract. We got so many points on that. We got so many points with TI. We got so many points with systematic. We know he's informative. We know we're on the general direction that he's outcome focused and responding. So he's looking like an INTP. But let's keep going.
Like, see, the problem with that argument is that it already presumes a reductionist, materialist, objective view of what constitutes nature. But if you're a scientist, you're going to think, well, in the final analysis, I don't know what nature is. I certainly don't know its origin or destination point. I don't know its teleology. I'm really ignorant about nature. And so when I say it's nothing but nature, I shouldn't mean it's nothing but what I understand nature to be.
So you just unraveled all of that with TI. It's very deep. It's very deep. You just unraveled all that with TI to destroy somebody saying, using the nature aspect.
I could say, will we have a fully reductionist account of cognitive processes? And the answer to that is yes, but by the time we do that, our understanding of matter will have transformed so much that what we think of as reductionist now won't look anything like what we think of reductionism now.
He's talking about the future. That'd be points for abstract.
Matter isn't dead dust. I don't know what it is, I have no idea what it is. Matter is what matters. There's a definition. That's a very weird definition. But the notion that we have, that if you're a reductionist, a materialist reductionist, that you can reduce the complexity of what is to your assumptions about the nature of matter, that's not a scientific
Your
proposition.
specific limited human assumptions of this century, of this week, in some sense, without God, in this complicated big definition that we're talking about, there's no humility, or
There's not enough.
There's less likely to be, or rather science can err in taking a trajectory away from humility.
Well,
Without something much more powerful than an individual human.
yeah, well then, and we know, the Frankenstein story comes out of that instantly. And that's a good story for the current times. It's like, you're playing around with making new life. You bloody well better make sure you have your arrows pointed up.
And it's interesting because you said science
So,
has...
like I said right there, that was straight outcome. That was outcome. People look at the end product. So that's why he's talking about the Frankenstein, because he sees that as the end product. That's what outcome is. It's like their focus is at the end product. They're not looking at the journey. They're looking at the end product. So even right there, he highlighted that he's looking at the end product. Like, you better be aware and you better point those things up, because Frankenstein, you want to create life. So he's talking about any consequences there as well. We have Jordan Peterson as informative. He's very informative, very descriptive, very wordy, not specific, concise, or to the point. So he can't be direct. So he cannot be an ENTJ or an INFJ. He's abstract, okay? And then so being informative eliminates 8 types. Being abstract eliminates 4 other types, okay? Because he's talking about theories, he's talking about intangibles, he's talking about contextual things, he's talking about philosophies, he's talking about what ifs, he's talking about ideas. So he's clearly abstract, metaphors, that type of thing. And he's a TIFE user. You can see that in his speech. He never rarely ever does he reference like an outside source. I think the only time he referenced outside source was because his TI wanted more classification to be able to update his internal logic on something. And we put that 1 point for TE there, but we've had like 11 points for TI. So it's clear as day that he's a TI user, and he anticipates what people will ask, and then he further takes that into a deeper knowledge or whatnot. And you can see that with a lot of TI users, usually TINE users. So he's a TIFE user. He's an SINE user. Talks about any consequences. Talks about internal sensations, like we talked about the cathedral and how he experiences very detailed memory there. He's talked about the internal sensations from it as well. So he's SINE. He's clearly systematic. Talks about hierarchy, systems here, system there, system with God, procedures. He even talked about a procedure to find the most admirable, to get the closest to God, and he literally designed that himself right there, live. So that right there puts us all the way down to INTP, ENTP. And the difference between INTP and INTPs are outcome focused, so they look at the end product. Like they're hunting the end product. ENTPs are progression or process, so they can fall in love with the process so much that they forget about the end product. Okay, and you'll see that with a lot of ENTPs. So with that said, him being outcome makes him an INTP, and he's primarily responding, staying on topic, and answering exactly what the guy asked or what they're leading into. He's not really interjecting anything, so that would also show that he's an INTP as well, because he's outcome and responding. But if you know he's outcome, then he has to be an INTP and not an ENTP. So we're done here. Jordan Peterson is an INTP. And thank you for the suggestion. I forget your name as a subscriber, but let's go laugh at Personality Database. They have him as INFJ. He can't be an INFJ because he doesn't have direct language. He's informative, and he's systematic. INFJs are people focused, and he's not a SE NI user. He's a SINE user. So yeah, that's completely wrong. But you know, somebody who voted 251 times was correct on the INTP. And at least somebody was close enough with the ENTP with 518 votes. I mean, at least that's close enough. But yeah, we know Personality Database does a horrible job. But this is Mongolian Mindset. And if you like the content, please subscribe. And drop a recommendation of a celebrity you would like us to type. We'll slowly but surely get to them. But that's it. We're done here.